asking questions, points of clarity, or interact with the in whatever way will allow them to ask questions at the session when the members have exhausted their questions. Doing that because it is a public meeting, it's open to the public, because it was also advertised in various newspapers in all the 3 official languages of the province. So in us starting, I'm going to allow members to produce themselves, and thereafter I'm going to ask the to introduce them.
Thank you very much, Chair, and good afternoon. My name is Matlodi Maseko, and I'm the member to the Standing Committee of Public Accounts, and also our member, Ricardo McKenzie, said he's running a little bit late and he'll be joining us just now. But he's online now, but he is coming in to join because we are doing the meeting not online. Thank you, Chair.
Good afternoon, Chairperson, and to the team. My name is Member Makamba Poja. I'm the alternating member in this committee. Thank you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Derek America.
Good afternoon. My name is Nomi Nkondla, alternate member to the SCOPA.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member. Committee and Auditor General.
Thank you, Chairperson, and good afternoon to Chairperson and the members and everybody else. My name is Ndombo Kanyo Nzamela. I'm the Senior Manager, Auditor General. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair. Vivian Langford. I'm also responsible for.
Good afternoon, Chairperson and committee members. My name is Ashley August. I'm from the Auditor General's Office, the Deputy Business Executive.
Good afternoon, members. I'm Tsepo Mushomi, Auditor General.
Good afternoon, Chair and members. I'm Mervyn Burton, the Audit Committee Chair for this department. Thanks.
Good afternoon, Chair. Good afternoon, members. My name is Ibrahim Abrams, Audit Committee Member, TPW. Thank you.
Thank you very much, honorable members and ladies and gentlemen. Administratively, we are assisted by it was the procedural officer, so Ms. Lizette Plute, who is the senior sitting over there, as well as on records, is assisting us. Now, in dealing with the report, I want us to first deal with the board briefing of the Auditor General for both the department as well as the entity. We will take the report as read. You don't have to read it word for word. Just bring to our attention those matters, salient issues that you think needs to be brought to our attention. Otherwise, we regard the report as read. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Chairperson. I will just move straight over to section 1, which is the introductory part in terms of our
department. You start with the department.
I'm starting with the department, yes. Okay. In terms of the introductory part, it's just highlighting our reputational promise, which I believe the audit committee is aware of, and the purpose of the document, which I won't go in detail because it's just to cover the audit outcomes of the department, as well as the organizational structure. I'm not going to dwell much there. So if you look at section 1.5, there we just highlight the funding in terms of revenue that was generated by the department, where we indicate that they exceeded what they budgeted for in terms of revenue, which is properly disclosed in their annual report, and the information also relating to expenditure that they have underspent by 1.1% in overall. Then in terms of the actual audit outcomes, the department has achieved a clean audit outcome, and we are only showing 4 years, but they have been clean for more than that. And in that table, we also detail the areas of compliance that we have looked at and audited, from which there were no findings. As we're indicating there were no findings on all the areas. meaning the department has achieved a clean audit opinion. Moving further is section 2, which talks about the emphasis of meta paragraphs. The emphasis of meta paragraphs, we just draw the attention of users to the matters that are already disclosed in the financial statements relating to uncertainties to litigations and claims, as well as non-adjusting events, which is events that happened subsequent to year end. Specifically, this one relates to the merger of the department with human settlements to form the infrastructure department, and also to split it to the mobility department. In terms of other matters, we reflect that there is information that is disclosed in the annual report or in the financial statements which is unaudited. It's just the supporting schedules that we don't audit and we not report.
This is the second part of our meeting, where the first part we were having a closed session meeting as the Standing Committee of Public Accounts with the Auditor General and the Audit Committee for purposes of being briefed on the audit outcomes of the department and its entity. Now, that was a closed session. The second part of our meeting is an open session where we are being joined by the department, led by the two ministers, for purposes of engaging on the annual report of the department, as well as also engaging with the Auditor General report, as well as the Audit Committee reports of both the department and the entity. As I said, this is an open meeting. In other words, it's also open to members of the public, those who want to join physically and also those who want to join online, for purposes of asking questions if they so wish, or points of clarity, because the meeting is public, because it was advertised in various newspapers in all the 3 official languages of the province. So we will allow those members of the public who join us either online or physically after we've exhausted our questions as members of the legislature. Now, without me wasting time, once again, welcome department as well as the entity led by the 2 ministers. I'm going to allow them to give some opening remarks if they so wish. If the acting HOD also want to make some opening remarks, I will allow that. And thereafter, we are going to go straight into the reports and we are going to be dealing with them simultaneously. Honorable Ministers.
Good afternoon, Chair. Good afternoon, colleagues. Thank you very much for the opportunity. Chair, I think the audit results speak for itself. So just from my side, thank you very much to the team for ensuring that good financial governance is maintained under the leadership of the HOD and the CFO. So from my side, Chair, I think it's in order. I don't know if Minister Summers wants to add or say anything, but I think we can get straight into it.
Go straight. Acting HOD.
Chair, no, I'm happy. I want to indicate that I'm the acting head of department because Mr. Gooch is overseas at the moment. And may I then use the opportunity to basically acknowledge that this year was under her leadership and that we acknowledge that and that we thank her for that.
Thank you very much, ministers and HOD. Honorable members, you know the drill in the committee is that we are dealing with section C and E of the report. Section A, B, and D were dealt with earlier in the morning, and we always are quick to caution members who have been in the morning to please not bring the problems of this morning to this afternoon. So, so those should have been dealt with their respective. So for purposes of this meeting, we'll only be dealing with C of the report. And then now I'm going to open the floor for those members who want to ask questions on C first of both report, C of both the department as well as the entity. Honorable America, I've seen your hand. Honorable Nkondlo, I've seen your hand. Honorable Makamba Boja as well as Honorable Maseko.
Thank you.
Honorable Mackenzie, so decide to ask, you are free.
Thank you, Chair. Chairperson, I refer to page 142. The department had 4 open cases of fraud and corruption. Can the department provide details on the nature of those open cases? And if possible, would rank those individuals or those party to those open cases hold or been conferred to them and those implicated perhaps, and whether, it's been months now after the reporting date, whether those cases have been sort of finalized yet, and if not, where in the process is it now? Were there any adverse findings or not related to those, if those cases have been concluded yet? If maybe one need not to be very specific in terms of the detail, because some of these matters may be of sensitive nature, and I understand that. But whether there was any criminality involved in those cases, and whether those, if there is evidence of criminality and those matters have been concluded, whether there were any reference with those matters referred to the relevant authorities for further action and processing. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, very Honorable Nkondlo.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon to the ministers and the colleagues from the department. Just want to check on page 139 on the strategic risks. And if I am correct, unless my glasses are failing me, because I see that the same risks in page, I think it's 69.
For some reason, they say audible.
Oh, okay. I'm saying, Chair, on page 139 on the risks, and if my glasses are not failing me, in the GMT, I see, if I think it's page 67, I see that also the same risks of GMT are also the same risks that you find in the department. Perhaps there's an explanation for that. But I'm interested on how this impact, because it's explained on the threats and work environment of the officials and stakeholders, which remains high. Outside of matters handed to the police, because I'm sure that would be one of the ways, how is the department itself putting measures of ensuring a safety environment for its officials? I think I'm raising this, we've seen how, I think in some of the problems in communities of protests and criminality have actually placed the lives of officials, particularly that is to go out. I'm not sure what's the nature in this instance. Perhaps that could be explained. And the notion of an unsustainable provincial transport system, which is responded to by a leadership development program. What kind of a program is this? What's the timeline? What's the plan? And I'm raising this, I think, in the morning session without bringing it here, Chair, that amongst others, I think there were transformation issues as it relates to equity in this particular department and transport space in general. So I'm interested if there is a leadership development program that the department views as a solution. What is entailed with that? How long is this leadership development program, and how do you view it resolving this problem? Last one on this risk, Chair. How is an appointment of a community SLO reducing construction-related expectations? I'm not in the space, so maybe one just needs to to understand this. My last one on this one, Chair, is that on page 141, I would have been interested. I think yesterday we were with a provincial treasurer, and amongst others, if you look at the underspending, also has to relate beyond the fuel shortages that are mentioned here. I think on the global material supply shortages. And I'm not sure if that in this department is not something that you would have experienced, because I see you mention fuel shortages as part of your key emerging risks. And I'm raising this because you are an infrastructure led department, and material supply and also prices, global prices post-COVID, given the variable development of manufacturing capabilities between countries like ourselves and other developed countries. So I'm just asking, is that not an issue as somewhat a risk, particularly on construction projects? If not, if it is, why is your risk a list that you mentioned silent on such that I think is important in your environment? Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson, and greetings to the meeting once again. I don't have any question on the GMT, and I only have one question under Transport and Public Works on Part C, page 153 and 154. I think it's also linked to Mr. Member America's question pertaining to the issue of an ex-employee of the department where he stole a diesel which amounts to an amount of 15,000 rand. So I want to know if the department has done anything with that matter, or was it only left to SAPS to deal with the case? And that is my question, Chairperson. Thank you.
I think Member Nkondlo already covered me on the questions, and I'm going to stand back for now, and then I'll come and make you proud.
I'm going to give over to the department ministers, and the HOD will decide who's going to answer which questions.
Chair, thank you. We will, the first question about fraud, we will, Ms. Andrews will answer.
Thank you, Chair. So the open cases related to the fraud and corruption section, it's alleged cases, and therefore the people implicated in the cases cannot be mentioned at this time. It does, however, relate to, I'll mention the type of allegation. So it's alleged fraud and corruption on weighbridge shifts, alleged fraud in lift maintenance at Grooterskree, alleged fraud and corruption with the supplier, and then various allegations of fraud involving a security service provider. All of these cases are currently under investigation with the department and the PFS section. Thank you.
If we're in court, we will say they are sub judice. Okay. So, so now, what's the question? I think that question also refers to the one that was raised by Honorable Makamba Mboja on the theft of a diesel.
Chair, yes.
If I may, Chair, sorry to interrupt. I think Member Makamba Boche's question was what steps have the department taken to deal with it?
Thank you, Chair. So, because this official is no longer under the employ of this department, the department cannot have disciplinary action enforced against him. So the case has been lodged with SAPS. But what the department has done is evaluate internal control procedures and establish or identify the weakness and then try to mitigate the impact of such things. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next question, I think, will be some of the question, but all those questions that we asked by, I think let's maybe reinforce the questions with Honorable Maseko.
I understand you're tight, Chair. Thank you very much, Chair. I just want to find out page 139, the Department of Transport and Public Works. No, they entered. There is on key strategic risks considered and addressed during the year. So on the second bullet, the department is saying that contributing factors to the risk have much to do with people's behavior and perceptions. And the department has little control over these matters. And we are talking about the threats to the officials. I just want to understand what are those perceptions and what behaviors are there? Because as we continue to talk about the cameras monitoring and engagement with authorities, and I think this department is one of the departments that is always talking the gospel of innovation. So if you have put the risk that you say you have to deal with the perception, maybe you can assist us to have an understanding of how do you allocate the finance to the perception that is there and what those perceptions are, and it will assist us in looking at the outcome to that effect. Thank you very much, Chair.
Chair, the comments made in the report about risk to officials refer mainly to traffic officials and people in that environment. So I think Mr. Reineke is the best person to answer on those questions.
Yeah, I think the security manager of the department should do that.
Before he starts, maybe just before he starts, the question about why does the risk look exactly the same? It's the same letter written by the accounting officer for both reports, so it is exactly the same, and it's the strategic risk register of the department, of which there's only one. So it will encapsulate both the departmental risk and the risk for the GMT entity.
Through you, Chair, let me just start with the last comment by the last speaker about people's behavior and perception. So the first thing that one needs to understand is that we are public servants. And as a public servant, we simply are doing a job to provide a service to the public. However, the public is sometimes of the view that if they're not getting the service that they want or they need, then threatening a public official will then have that official removed and another official will come there that will be able to provide them with the service. So it's a perception that if public officials are threatened, then they would change their behavior and allow a service that is not being provided to be provided. So that's the first thing about perceptions and people's behavior. And it's the behavior of the public to the service that they require us to provide. in terms of securing the safety of public officials. Firstly, we have a standard operating procedure in place where if a public servant is threatened, then we act immediately together with the Department of Community Safety as well as SAPS to do an assessment of the threat that was received and the degree to which either the official or the official's family is under risk or is at risk. So that's what happens when we receive a threat. However, all of our facilities undergo an annual threat risk assessment, and that threat risk assessment tells us what sort of threats are possible and what sort of mitigating factors we must put in place to ensure that officials are safe when they are at a place of work. So all of our facilities have perimeter fences, they have security guards, and in high-risk areas, there are also metal detectors. In lower-risk facilities, we have security guards that have handheld detectors, which are used to detect metal objects. At the moment, we are busy with the Department of Community Safety to have all public facilities declared gun-free zones. But that's a long process that we need to go through with the State Security Agency. Very recently, we did a comprehensive threat risk assessment of several of our officials who work with the minibus taxi fraternity, because that is one of the areas where we receive the most number of threats. And one of the things that we are in the process of doing is to determine what sort of action the accounting officer can take to ensure the safety of an official when a threat is received and we consider that threat to be material. And then, of course, we have officials who use government vehicles. Now, these government vehicles are very obvious when they are in a community, and it is easy for these officials to be targeted, and sometimes they do get targeted. So in the event of a hotspot or unrest, we then withdraw our staff immediately from those areas, and we work together with the Department of Community Safety and the South African Police Service to make sure that is done. Thank you, Chair.
Follow-up questions? Yes,
Chair. Yeah, thank you very much. Chair, I was asking this question from 139 because I was trying to see if what is on page 144 on the health and safety and environmental issues will talk to the page of the key strategic risk when coming to the wellness of the officials. Now I'm trying to see, because if you are talking about, rightfully so, like your traffic officers, the mental wellness will be part of that, of what happens on the roads out there. But when I look at this, it doesn't, I'm trying to read to see where do you recognize that as one of the priorities that has to be under the health and safety and environmental issues. And I'm not seeing that. So if you can help me to show me where are you talking to that really to allocate for the mental wellness of the law enforcement or the traffic officers, I will appreciate that. Thank you, Chair.
Chair, if I may, the Western Cape government subscribes to the Employee Health and Wellness Program, which caters for every single staff member to solicit free of charge health and wellness services through this program. With regards to traffic law enforcement, we also have an IT solution in place that helps traffic officers as well as their supervisors to identify certain behaviors, which will then sort of raise a red flag for the supervisor to address that behavior before the traffic officer is sent back onto the road. Most of that information about employee health and wellness, I think, is in section D of the report under human resource.
Chair, can I add?
Yes, yes.
So when it comes to traffic officers, just in addition to the general things for the whole of the department, we are also looking at identifying behaviors that speak to the wellness of an officer early. And so we are looking at the rollout of a project which we call Life Events Management System of an officer, where we look at them from the traffic college, we look at their performance, we see how their performance in the field, we see if there are dips in the performance, and we know when to intervene, and we try to see if that's got anything to do with wellness and so forth. That is in the pipeline. We are busy working with that, and we are working with specialists in behavioral economics to try and determine what happens there. We're also looking at incidents that they come across during the course of the road. So if, for example, they are at the scene of a crash and a baby has died and so forth, we're trying to link that life event to if there was any dip in performance around that, we know that this person's starting to be affected by the actual event itself. But we're also putting systems in place to deal with the incident before that dip happens. In other words, when an officer comes to a scene and is involved in a traumatic event. So we are looking at a peer review program where peers come together and they start to talk about it and so forth. And it's rolled out in the US. I forget the program now, in the FBI in the US. And that's the program we're bringing down here, Gavin Code. What is the organization you? National Sea Rescue Institute are also utilizing the system, and so we're trying to introduce it within the department as well. So all of these initiatives we are busy implementing within the department. Sea Rescue Institute.
If I can add to that, it's called the Critical Stress Incident Management System, and it's utilized by the National Sea Rescue Institute. And what we're trying to do in the transport branch is to adopt it. It's a system, a systematic response to trauma and personnel that experience trauma. So we've been trying to introduce it. It's a long-term behavioral change management model.
It looked like as I've exhausted your questions on C. Now, just before we move, then I want us to move.
Some of my questions are not.
Yes. The questions that were asked by Honorable Nkondlo, especially in relation to the issue of, I think she did mention something to do with CLO. How is it a risk to a construction? Also, the issue of the shortage of fuel as emerging risk and its impact on the construction and why it was not mentioned as a risk. I've captured you well. Now, among the risk, I think you've mentioned that the appointment of the CLO. How is that a risk, or is it a political risk, Minister?
No, it's not a political risk, but your question might be a political risk. Chairperson, now if you read the sentence properly, the risk is community action fueled by construction-related expectations. So the CLO in this instance, or the community liaison officer, is actually the risk reduction mechanism utilized by the department. Well, your CLOs interact with the community and the link between the project and the community itself. Remember, if the department only comes in and does a project and there's no interlink between the department and that specific project, we've seen in the past times trouble in various communities where your CLO is the interlink between the two. That's how your liaison official between the two. He or she will alert the department to various issues that perhaps they do not pick up.
Okay, Honorable Maseko.
Let me ask the question this way, maybe. If we have a project of health, there is a clinic that is being built, a CLO is appointed with the community. Who's going to appoint the CLO? Is the department or is the Department of Infrastructure?
Just before you respond.
And who's going to, the CLO is going to communicate with the Department of Health, talking to the needs, because I tend to believe that clinic, it will be reacting to what the community is asking for. And who is going to be responsible for that CLO?
Before you answer, just let's get some reinforcement from Honorable Nkon. Honorable Nkon. Mitigate. That's another level now. Yes, yeah, yes, yeah. No, okay, Department, please respond to the question, Honorable Maseko, as well as.
Chair, I can only answer on in my field, of course, which is now roads, that where we have community liaison officers. The projects are normally stable, but can never be sure. They can always, at a particular project, there can always be an issue rising, but it's normally dealt with. I don't know whether Mr. Peterson wants to add to the point, because he basically works with with the industry and with the construction processes. But and I don't know whether from works somebody may want to say something, but from in my field, the CLO is a must, and it is appointed for each and every project that we go into. We appoint a CLO normally through the contractor, but I mean the CLO must be paid, so in the end it is part of the cost of the project.
Just an example on the CLO met. You built a very big bridge in Ashton, yes. Did you have the CLO there? And what result did it bring? It's a huge project. That was massive, multi-million.
Yeah.
What was the effectiveness of the CLO? I'm just trying to be practical.
Yeah, but the role of the community liaison officer is to act as your liaison with the community and also with the hiring in of labor and things like that. Everything that you want to go to the community with, you do that through your community liaison officer, because that's why he's got carry that name. So neither us nor the contractor nor our consultant talks to the community without it being arranged through the community liaison office.
I think what is also important to note that once a project has been commissioned or once it's been handed over to a contractor, it actually becomes the contractor's site for all intents and purposes. So not saying that the department won't intervene when the construction mafia, as Honorable Nkondlo referred to, intervenes, that the department will step aside to address if there's issues. But for all intents and purposes, that is not a government site until the project is delivered back throughout the process.
Minister is of course 100% correct.
Chair, I'm covered because I was once a CLO and I was not politicized, so I understand it. Thank you.
Speaking from experience. Just this one last question from my side, on the issue of on page 153. Maybe just try and break it down a little bit in much simpler terms to layman's term like myself. They said there's that penultimate paragraph in the middle. Yeah. Now it says that the progressive disciplinary steps, that word, the expenditure occurred due to non-compliance to supply chain management and delegation and value-added tax that was removed from calculation of the preference points to make a bit more comparable. In this case, it says there were 94 incidents. That's in brackets. Now, it says progressive disciplinary steps have been implemented by the Department for the prior financial year expenditure, while it is yet to institute disciplinary steps against the departmental of as it's yet to conclude on a determination on the value-added tax that was removed from the bid. So you still want to determine how much value-added tax. It was just a bit difficult for me to understand. If you can just put it in layman terms for me.
I think we missed the page that you referred to. Can you?
153. If I may reread it again, it says the expenditure occurred due to non-compliance to supply chain management delegation and value-added tax that was removed from calculation of the preference points to make a bit more comparable. And in this case, it says 94 incidents. And then it says progressive disciplinary steps have been implemented, but it says also you still need to determine the value added that was removed from the bid. So that's where I begin to lose it as a layman person.
Can I explain,
Yes,
Chair?
yes, yes.
Okay, so what this was about is the conflicting instructions given between the CIDB instructions and what was in the preferential procurement policy regulations, which was subsequently declared unconstitutional. It is about that. So the department applies as an infrastructure department the rules of the CIDB. And the rules of the CIDB says you have to bring bids to a comparative level. In other words, if you are SMMEs, you cannot force companies to be vet vendors. So you take off vet and then you because vet accrues not to the supplier, it accrues to the receiver of revenue. So it's never going to be money that goes into the pocket of the supplier. So therefore, if you have 5 tenders and 3 of them are vet vendors, you take off the vet, you then evaluate the tender, and then you put the vet back afterwards because it's not something that will be in the pocket of the bidder. So that's the rules of the CIDB, but that's not the rules in the preferential procurement regulations. It was in the 2001 regulations, and then it subsequently changed in the 2017 regulations that the Constitutional Court says is unconstitutional because it goes beyond what the Act allows. So that's why you see the large number of cases, because those cases were all infrastructure cases and it all followed the rules of the CIDB. So this was an interpretation issue. Then, Chair, the second one is when we send this through to the Provincial Treasury for condemnation, because there was no fraud, there was no negligence, there was no malice. One of the key requirements from the Treasury point of view is that you have to say what progressive disciplinary steps that you take. In this instance, it's retraining the officials. Because even though you now sit with an unconstitutional piece of legislation, the effective date, and that's what we need to reskill them about, is you only need to do this now for a period until the 1st of, round about the end of Feb of 2023, and then you change it back to what it was in the CIDB. So it's that kind of thing, because we sit in an environment where the legislation and the prescripts around supply chain constantly change. So you would see even in the Auditor General's report, Chair, they are saying that the new preferential procurement regulations to be published shortly is a risk. It's a risk because then it's again a matter of interpretation and implementation throughout the country, and the risk of it being applied differently depending on how it's interpreted.
Thank you. Well informed. Otherwise, as a layman, I would have never understood that. Thank you very much. Now, honorable members, if you don't have further question on C, I want us to move to E of both reports, that is for the department and also for the entity. If I may have an indication of members who would like to ask questions. Honorable Makamba Mboja, go ahead.
Thank you, Chairperson. My first question on entity GMT on Part E is on page 139. Under revenue from non-exchange transactions, it is mentioned there that there were services in kind to the tune of 9.1 million. So I would like to know what are these services relating to? That's number one. And then on page 148, there's an unspent conditional grant of more than 29.8 million, which is very much concerning. So I want to know why were the grants not utilized in the end? And then the page 155, on the issue of vehicles aligned by the entity to the Department of Social Development, what was the purpose of such alienation, and what is upon request by the department to achieve particular mission? And then on page 181 at table 33.1.4.1, under the title Impact on the Going Concern Assessment, what is the meaning, or what is meant there, that the full cost of providing the goods and services must be recovered through tariffs? Can we get more explanation on that? And then on page 189.
Which GMT or?
GMT, I said it.
Oh, all your questions are on
Yeah,
GMT. Okay.
on Part E.
Okay.
So page 189 in point 35.2.4.2 and point 35.2.4.3. Pertaining to the appointment of the Assistant Director, the Fleet Planning and Question and Deputy Director, Financial Accounting are spouses. I'm not sure if you are aware of that. First question that I want to know is page 189, Chairperson. Table 35.2.4.2.
Yeah.
Okay. The question there, Chairperson, is the question of, okay, let me not say that, but what comes out there is that those people are spouses, so I want to know if they were appointed at the same time. Similarly to page 190, there's also an issue of Mrs. T, tenant, being appointed whilst their brother is also there. Is that not insinuating nepotism, especially taking into account that some of these people are appointed in management positions? And then the last question, Chairperson, is on page 193 at 37.2, pertaining to the fruitless and wasteful expenditure of 199,000. Question there is, who cloned the petrol cards and what is being done about the situation? And what is the purpose of so-called anti-fraud initiative if people can do job rob the entity of close to 200,000 just like that? So those are my questions, Chairperson. I know if I should continue to the next department or should I wait?
Hey.
It's long. I'm going to summarize these ones.
Okay.
Okay, the ones to Transport and Public Works, Chairperson, it's page 2 to 6 regarding the underspending related to skills development program.
We are now on the department.
Yes, okay. At point 4.1. And then the next question is on page 239 regarding the donations that we received in kind. What I want to know is whether the department does any business with Old Mutual, either directly or indirectly, pertaining to the issue of subsidiary companies, for an example. And then the last question is on page 241, where there's more than 36.6 million that was used on agencies and outsourced services. So what type of services were these that were outsourced by the department, which amounted to 36.3 million? And then the last one, Chairperson, is 243, about 31 cases of damaged GMT vehicles that costed 222,000. What kind of damages that resulted in such a huge amount of money? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Any other member? Okay. No. Let's first allow questions because I take it that all these questions were noted. Okay. So, okay. Let's start then answering Honorable Makamba Mboja's questions. First, start with the question with the services in kind to the tune of 1.9 million. Okay, Minister, you want to lead?
No, I just wanted to say that if we can deal with all GMT's questions and then move over to the department. So if there's any further questions on GMT, I would like to propose that we deal with that, Chair.
GMT? Any GMT? Okay.
I have one, Chair. Chair, this one relates to the contingent liabilities. It's on page, you say? On page, let's see. In fact, I have two questions. Claims, future claims, it's over 3 million rand, but it is not listed as a contingent liability. Let's just get to the page quickly because it caught me off guard, not Chairperson, Minister. Here we go. I think it is on page 118. Note 31, 1.1, claims are instituted against GMT by third parties who are party to a motor vehicle accident involving a government vehicle. An amount of whatever, that's for previous financial year. And I move on to the last sentence, or the second last. The estimated total amount of claims made against GMT as at 31st of March 2022 amounts to 3,346,504 rand. A contingent liability of that amount exists, but has not been raised in the financial statements as the evidence as the existence of this obligation will only be acknowledged by the future payment of these claims. Why is it being sort of framed like that? And given that an estimated quantum is sort of amount is known and not recognized that could possibly be the future liability or not. And I perhaps understand that it could be less and it could be a little more, but perhaps. And then, Chair, second question. At the George hub of GMT, we did oversight visit at the beginning of this year, I think, yeah. And you were part of it. And I see it taken a nice picture of us, and it features in one of in this book. But what we've noticed, Chair, is that the parking garages, there was installation of solar panels on the entire, parking area. Now, I was trying to find in this reporting, where do you account for that? How did you list that? Is it part of the general asset, fixed asset class for that particular facility? Because I don't see a separate classification for that asset. And if we speak as a future risk, the componentization of assets, then certainly that in itself would be classified as an element of that componentization, because it will have a different sort of depreciation, lifetime, etc., whatever the case may be. So maybe you can just help me to understand, because it is an extensive installation, and certainly there ought to be some sort of evidence that it exists, and this is the value of it, whatever the case may be. Thank you, Chair.
Honorable, any other question on E of GMT? E of GMT. Okay. So if there is none, then let's allow the department to respond.
Yes, GMT will support in the person of Mr. Wiggle.
Okay. Chair, thank you very much. Chair, through you, I'll leave the pure accounting questions to the accountant. Just to touch on the question with regards to the family members. Now, in terms of GRAP, we have to report on relationships within the close family relationships within the entity, and we do that every year. It hasn't changed from last year. I can report that the spouses that you mentioned, that are mentioned in the report, they actually met while they were working at GMT. They've been there, I think, longer than what I have been. So they were not married when they first joined GMT. And similarly with the brother and the sister, we report that for transparency's sake, but the sister, who's the senior, was a senior in an acting capacity, and she, of course, had nothing to do with the appointment process of her siblings. So this is just in terms of our accounting practices, our way of being totally transparent with regards to relationships, especially at management level, where there may be decisions taken between family members. Then with regards to, I'll let Rian deal with the alienation. The cloned cards. This is unfortunately something that does not only impact on GMT, it is something that all fleet management companies are grappling with right now. And it is something that the police, the special commercialized crime unit is also digging into very, very deeply. With the technology that is available out there by criminals, they are able to take a bank card and clone it multiple times. So by the time that we as a fleet owner or the banks realize that the card has been cloned and it has been used multiple times, the money has been spent. And we are working very closely with the police to also introduce technology on our side, and working with the banks to see whatever technology is available to us to employ within GMT to to address this. We're using all of the technology at our disposal, including our tracking, so that we can have a report to show that this vehicle is in point A, there's a card being used at point B, the two don't match, and that then gives us an indication that there's potential fraud. Unfortunately, we are having to look at the technology to make it more of a proactive thing. At this point in time, it is something that is active, and we have to investigate with the police. But we are working with the banks, as I've indicated. Just on the George Hub, member Medicus question, and the solar panels on that facility, the assets that we utilize, the buildings that we utilize, won't reflect on GMT's books, because those assets belong to immovable asset management as the custodian of all government facilities. So all assets relating to the facility will be reflected in the books of the Department of Transport and Public Works under IAM. Hope that answers your question.
Chairperson, thank you. There were a few questions. So on the services in kind, so in our financial reporting framework, the accounting standard GRAP 23, which deals with revenue. And if I can refer the member to numbered page 169, and this is the use of free accommodation provided by the Department of Transport and Public Works. So in terms of the requirement on in the accounting framework, that accounting standard requires us to quantify that benefit which the trading entity receives, and GMT did not incur any costs. So the sites that we currently have that we are using are listed there. It's in Ruland Street in Cape Town, Hope Street, Risper Street, Maitland, that's the new building, and then also a site adjacent to Risper Street, and then the earth in George. So that covers the services in kind aspect, and it's quantified there as 10.7 million for the year. On the grants, numbered page 148, this is a reflection of a liability at the point in time, and the reporting date is the 31st of March. So what this reflects is that GMT is still liable for these funds if it can't fulfill the grant conditions which the entity did with all these departments in procuring the vehicles and actually allocating those vehicles. So it's more a timing event than anything else, and we all know about the challenges in terms of vehicle procurement and the supply chain and the value chain that's involved in that. So basically this is merely a reflection of the liability if we can't fulfill those grant conditions. There was a question on the same page on note number 5.1.5 on social development, and this is the vehicles procured as a procuring agent. So in the same MOUs that we enter into with client institutions, some MOUs might have the conditions attached that GMT does not manage those vehicles and charge daily tariffs and kilometer tariffs. So basically we're the procuring agent to fulfill and basically alienate those vehicles to the department. So in this case, it was two Nissan NV350s that were procured, and the alienation date was July 2021 to meet those conditions. There was a question on the going concern and the recovery, what is meant with the recovery of services through tariffs. In terms of the Treasury Regulations, Section 19, it says that a trading entity has to recover its cost of its goods and services through charges. Now, the term that we use at GMT is daily and kilometer tariffs. So basically, everything that we embark on, we have to recover through a tariff structure. A trading entity does not get central funding. It does not get funding from a central point. So everything that we basically have to incur, we have to generate through revenue. Chairperson, there was also a question on page 180 on contingent liabilities. And basically the term that we use there, that it's not recognized on the balance sheet. And I think it's quite important just to read the standard definition of contingent liabilities. And basically it says that it's a potential liability and may be incurred due to uncertain future events. So the last sentence then, that paragraph reflects that GMT still has to investigate those claims issued to us before we can actually determine it to be a liability. So that's the reason why it's only disclosed in the disclosure note and not actually taken up and recognized on the balance sheet as a liability, as a provision or a trade payable, something like that. Thank you.
Just if are there any further additions from the department? Just before then, that means we must move then to E of the department. Now, just before we move on that, just a follow-up, Mr. Ahmed, on the issue of the spouses and the relatives. No, there's nothing we can do with the people who got into each other in the line of duty. There's really nothing we can do about that, you know. So, but then obviously, where there is a sister who is working in a senior position and the brother was employed later on, was there no, what is our processes saying, our employment processes in terms of that, and the people who sit on the panel, and also in terms of declaring, as during that process, was there a declaration that, look, I've got a sister who's working there? Who came first, really? Was it the sister or the brother? But obviously, if they are in the same department, it will always raise a kind of suspicion as to whether are there no preventative measures in our employment process that make sure that, I know maybe in law there's nothing that say you cannot employ someone who's not your brother or your sister, but it's makes of nepotism, you know, and obviously just why I want to check whether don't we have employment laws and employment procedures that are actually kind of can trigger warning sign when something like those happen. As I said, those who go to each other in the line of there's nothing really. Yes.
Thank you, Chair. Actually, my question is on the ones in the line of duty. I mean, what? That's one can't stop from what has happened. It happened. It's how do you manage that? Because I mean, how do you manage once they've got married? How do you manage that section, the division, the staff, the perception, the things, what they discuss at home we can't manage? So how do you manage that in your department? How do you manage the people's perception around it?
Separate the bedroom from the boardroom. Okay. No, let's hear what the department is gonna. Okay, Minister, maybe you can assist.
I just want us to take it back to the facts, because we're dealing with professional people. The names have been declared in the annual report, and the manner in which this discussion is going, respectfully, Chair, I think we need to go back to the facts and allow the department to answer the actual questions. Thank you.
Well, as Chairperson, actually on that bill, we are dealing with professional people. And the fact that two people working in the department is married. And how do you manage the relationship? What do the individuals, whether in the same department, how do you manage that relationship?
Minister, before you, I will just maybe allow the department to respond.
No, I need to correct the perception here. When I refer to the professional people, I refer to individuals that are named in the annual report. This bedroom to boardroom comment is what I have an objection to.
I withdraw that if.
Thank you.
Offensive. I did not mean. Ahmed.
Thank you, Chair. I will ask, or Ramesh has indicated that he'll touch on the legalities around the HR processes, etc. But just with regard to these specific cases, firstly, when it comes to the husband and wife, they are in two separate units within GMT. So there's no possibility of the one being a subordinate of the other, and there is clear separation of duties and separation of powers of individuals. It's not that the husband would send a submission to the wife for approval. That, of course, is very clear to them. They are professional, and the chances of that happening, of course, would also be minimal because they do understand the separation of powers in that regard. Also, with the appointment of the brother and the sister, I can perhaps mention it here now already, that in next year's report, it will be different because the sister has resigned. She's gone to the private sector. But again, they're in two separate units. The brother, in fact, wasn't appointed into government by in GMT. He transferred from another department into GMT. And when it came to that process, the sister was not involved. Also, and this is where Mr. Maharaj can come in, that when we appoint someone, there is an approval process for a shortlisting panel and for an interviewing panel. And that, of course, is where we prevent any possible nepotism from creeping in.
Thank you, Chair. If I may just quickly add a little bit more information to allay any fears of nepotism. Firstly, there is a declaration that is signed by all shortlisting and interview panel members to say that they have no interests in the candidates that they are going to look at for shortlisting purposes or for interview purposes. Secondly, when we look at relationships in the workplace, the Public Service Code of Conduct, as well as the Public Service Regulations, provides very clear guidance as to how relationships within the workplace need to be managed. The very first one is that no two people that have a direct relationship, be it a blood relationship or a relationship through marriage, may be a supervisor and supervisee. Okay, so in a case where two people, for example, get married and there's a supervisor and supervisee relationship before the marriage, after the marriage, those two people must be separated. And that's the condition. So it cannot happen that you work together and then you decide to get married and then your spouse is your supervisor and, you know, things are very, very okay. That work relationship then changes. And the very same thing applies for when we're doing recruitment. So like I said, there's a declaration that needs to be signed, and that declaration then prevents people who have a vested interest, either a spouse or a family member that's on the long list or even being interviewed, that person cannot be part of that process. Thank you, Chair.
Honorable Mackenzie.
Thank you. So there is a clear rules and regulations so that maybe share that with some of our colleagues. So there is guidelines as to how it should happen. Thank you.
Honorable Maseko.
Member Mackenzie covered me that all the time in labor, there's always the rules and regulations that are prescribing in the scenarios what needs to happen, and we can continue.
Thank you very much, Honorable Members. We will from time to time confront some of, or get to these uncomfortable questions, and then members should not feel afraid to ask these questions, because I was not aware of it when it was raised by Honorable Makamba Mboke. I felt that I need to make a follow-up. As a member of Parliament, is a member, so that when these things are out there, people are going to say that Parliament and that Provincial Parliament. And then I can answer and I can explain because I've got an explanation now. So these members don't make us that we must feel afraid to ask questions. Because in the end of the day, we are members of this august house. When we must actually defend this house, You can only defend it if you've got information. If you don't have, I'll just say, Andy asked. So if we move then, Honorable Maseko.
Saying that, Chair, just a quick one. What empowers the department or the HR if I'm working with my colleague and then eventually we get married? What regulation do you have for you to move me to where I don't have experience in and I'm championing where I'm working?
The public service regulations as well as the public service code of conduct does not allow people who have a blood relation to have a supervisee relationship in the workplace. Like I explained earlier, you might be friends while you are working in an office, but as soon as you decide to get married, then the workplace relationship must change, not the personal relationship. So if you get married as husband and wife, then the supervisor of one of the most senior person must take a decision as to where either the husband or the wife would be redeployed to.
CFO?
Thank you, Chair. Ramesh, I think what the member wants to know is how do you determine where you move them to in line with their capabilities? In other words, not move them to a place where you know that that is not their strength or not their skill set, or perhaps put them in a situation where they can therefore not perform.
That's correct. It's a mutual decision because the decision of getting married comes with the decision of what the new role will be or new position will be within the department. So it's negotiated.
What to take for now is not there. We will get to it.
I think the response is that it's negotiated. Obviously, there are those, if we can familiarize ourselves. Now, honorable members, I want us to move then to the second part of Honorable Mboja's question, which was with the department. Now, can we go to those answers? That, I think most of I think it was something to do with page 230. Can you repeat them quickly, Honorable, for the benefit of the
Okay, Chair, the
department?
first one is on page 226 pertaining to the underspending on skills development program. And then the other one is on page 239 in regards to the donations that were received by the department, whether the department has a direct or indirect relationship or business deals with Old Mutual. And then the last two, it's on page 241 on the issue of the 36.3 million that was used for agencies for outsourcing of services. And then the last one was about the issue of 31 vehicles that have been damaged and which resulted to an expense of 222,000. Like I wanted to know what are the cause of the damages to that extent.
Thank you, Chair. Ms. Andrews.
I want, because there's three questions there on the department. Maybe let's allow other members to ask their questions as well. And then when you answer all of those. Then we are finished with E. Honorable Maseko on E, Honorable Nkondlo on E.
Okay. Thank you very much, Chair. Chair, I just want to latch on members' question. I think a huge percentage of underspending is the allocation that was going to the municipalities, I take it. So I want to find out that for you to allocate, that means there was a need. So if that didn't happen, what are the action plans that you do have? I know that the money went back to Treasury, but what are the action plans? Because for you to budget that amount of money, there is a need in the municipalities, of which I anticipate the next financial year, you're still going to allocate. And now, what are the action plans? And I'm talking this again, now we'll repeat the issue of the capacity within the municipalities, because it might be one of the issues that made them not to access that funding. So what are you doing as the department to make sure that that need you tap into the municipalities to assist them? And another one, that when we engaged with the AG and the audit committee, there is an issue of the emerging risk. And one of them was the classification of the housing related expenditure. Maybe if we, and which comes from 2012, my understanding, if maybe we can get the response that as you engage with the audit committee, I tend to believe that quarterly is one of the standing in the issues that you talk to. And if that hasn't happened, maybe we can get in future to say that what is going to happen. And another one, the measure of human settlements and infrastructure, is identified as an emerging risk. So there's an issue of the implementing agents. We got a very beautiful explanation of how is it going to work, which we appreciate the audit committee and the AG in explaining, more audit committee explained to us. But I want to find out, especially when coming to human settlement, that is going to be a program. Municipalities are implementing agents. They've got the implementing agents, and then you're going to be the department also that you'll be signing off for the for human settlement, implementing that. How is going to work? We are trying to find how is it going to work for us to understand that now. Much as we know that the person that signs off will be the one who accounts to the monies, but for the performance service delivery side of it, how are we going to go about? Who's going to account to that? I will appreciate if we can get that so that we don't see the red into the 10 years of green from the department. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Nkondlo, then Honorable America.
Thank you, Chair. My first one, Chair, I think starts. I just want to take from where Member Maseko left, I think on page 226, the underspending on the transfers to municipalities. I want to understand whether what type of projects are these the municipalities could not implement, and their impact on service delivery. I think I listened in the morning, I think an explanation, I think it was given by CFO, with explaining that when these projects are ready, I think the money gets to be handed back, and then so that they can still use them. So I'm interested to know and whether as COPA we can receive the list of these projects. Where are they? What is the nature of those projects? That's the first one, Chair. The second one in page 238. I just want to know the community-based program. Does it refer to? Is this money towards stipends being paid to people? When you talk about a community-based program, what exactly is that in terms of the actual spending items? And then on page 241, under goods and services, if the department can explain to us what are these extra computer services that have doubled up from the previous year reporting, including what is it specifically that has caused the transport provided as part of the departmental activities to almost, I think, almost triple, if my maths lit serves me well. And then, Chair, on the material loss written off in page 243, 5.1, what were the nature of these damages and losses. And I understand, I think what we are normally told that they go through state law advisor who would advise that be written off. Can we get an explanation of what was the justification of this being written off? Both the one on the GMT and the one on the damages and losses to roads, construction and maintenance. Thanks.
Very much. Honorable America.
Chair, thank you, Chair. I just have one question. It's on page 265. Principal agent arrangements. The outline of these Beaufort West municipality. When compared to 2 financial years, it is quite stark in terms of the difference in amounts. Perhaps, Chair, if you can get an explanation for that. Thank you. And then lastly, Chair, and then perhaps the Department could provide the response in terms of the accounting for the solar panels at the George Hub, because services in kind to GMT, I suppose, and perhaps if there's how does the department account for that particular installation from part of the immovable asset of that sort of facility, or is there a separate sort of classification for that particular installation? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Admin?
Thank you, Chair. So the underspend on the skills development program is there's 2 big contributing factors to that. One being COVID and the effect of the project actually just changing the amount of people that can go on it and when they can go on it, and also social distancing, etc. And then the next contributing factor would be the suppliers that had to be registered on the IPS, the Integrated Procurement System, had issues linking correctly with the correct commodities. The second question then on donations. With Old Mutual, the department doesn't have any direct or indirect relationship with them. Then the next question on agencies and outsourced services. That is the cost that we pay for the management of the weighbridges and the overload control. The 31 cases of the damaged vehicles. The cost relates to actual damages to vehicles. So there's a whole procedure that the vehicle needs to go in for an assessment. They estimate the cost. Then the department needs to pay upon completion of repairs, obviously, and then after that, it's investigated to find out whether or not an official can be held liable for it. So they need to be, it goes through the legal services of state attorney. They then determine whether someone was grossly negligent. If someone was grossly negligent and they were found then liable, then we would then recover the money from the official. If there's no gross negligence, determined and the person isn't then liable in law, the department would then have to pay it. The unspent funds of the municipality, so that relates to the transfer payments that they haven't spent. The big problem there, or it's the misalignment between the 2 financial years. So a municipality would have a financial year starting in June, and the department's financial year would start in April. So by the time the municipality actually find out that they are allowed to spend the money, then it's already late in their financial year. So they still need to go through their procurement procedures. And then, okay.
Chair, if I can go on to emerging risk, the classification of the housing-related expenditure. We've never had engagements with our audit committee on housing-related expenditure because that actually relates to the Department of Human Settlements, which will only be merged with the department in the next financial year. So that's the one thing. The second thing, when you ask the question about the service delivery side and what are we going to do so that we prevent a situation where you find DTPW going from green to red. And I'm smiling at the minister because we've had long conversations about this. The first thing that we did agree upon was that what we would do from a DTPW DHS point of view is to undertake a proper due diligence on all of the areas of weaknesses as they've been identified both by the Auditor General, by the internal audit reports of the department, as well as by the Minister. That will give us a good indication of where capacity needs to be built, and it will also inform exactly how you pull DHS into the infrastructure department. In other words, do you isolate it as a branch? What do you do with the program in the program one space? In other words, the strategy, the financial management, and the supply chain space, and how do you mitigate the risks? Because that's the issues highlighted by the Auditor General as emerging risks moving forward. Looking at the audit outcomes for DHS and looking at the audit outcomes for DTPW. For us, it's more than just audit outcomes, it's also how do we review the delivery model so that what we can do is optimize or leverage the land that we have as the Department of Infrastructure to then address issues of integration moving forward, which is an issue and a priority for the Minister, not just centrally in the CBD, but also in rural areas. What kind of interventions do we make there, and how do we leverage the private sector to do so? So this is part of the due diligence that we wish to undertake in order to address the concerns that you've raised. The issue around what type of projects, the list of projects in relation to the transfer of municipalities, Mr. Fourie will answer.
That's an easy one for me. The projects are basically all road-related projects as part of the subsidy that we pay over to municipalities for proclaimed roads when they do maintenance or rehabilitation work on it. The biggest one of this particular period was the bridge in Witzenberg in Ceres. We're right in the town where but Witzenberg is rebuilding that bridge, widening it, and the department's budgeted for a subsidy for that, and the project started late, so they couldn't spend all the money in our financial year, and then the money gets rolled over into the current financial year, and they're busy doing that. Obviously with a submission to Treasury, but normally when the contract is on the go, then the money is rolled over. Then there were another couple of questions about expenditure on computer services and changes and damages to vehicles, page 246, Shapira. Chair, with your permission, maybe I can just add something to the question about damages to vehicles on page 243. The damages to construction-related vehicles are normally damages to the accident-related damages to the yellow fleet. We must remember that the yellow fleet is not only our own yellow fleet, but all the district municipalities also has a yellow fleet, which is our vehicles. Any accidents and damage to those vehicles which are used in a construction environment are basically paid by us or covered by us. And they are, that's the result, and that's the money. I cannot obviously comment on the GG part. There's also a line for GG vehicles. I don't know whether GMT wants to comment on that. Okay.
The only other question is the solar panels. So in terms of our accounting policies and standards, we don't comply with GRAP. We comply with the modified cash standard. So all the construction work performed on our own assets is then capitalized to the actual building.
And there's just one more question that's unanswered, the one on page 265, Beaufort West, the difference in total.
So these fees are paid to municipalities on collection of or the renewals that is actually performed by them. So this is obviously drawn then from a demand base. So the more they renew in the municipalities, the more they collect then. So these are the amounts outstanding, or the amounts that we paid. The amounts that we paid for the renewals that were performed.
Thank you. To understand that, it's an anomaly between the two financial years, and what resulted in that, why did they underperform so starkly that, there needs to be an explanation, because there are people who who have renewed their licenses to the previous financial year, a number of people. And the past financial year, you see a massive decrease in the number of renewals. And what is the primary reason for that? Thank you.
Specifically on Beaufort West. Yeah, specifically on Beaufort West. No. I'm just trying to emphasize his question because he's concentrating only on one municipality, so there might be reasons. So just wanted to.
Thank you, Chair. So during the COVID pandemic, there was certain extensions given to motorists on renewal of their licenses. So the municipalities can only collect on these fees. They can only get fees if licenses are renewed. So once the COVID extensions were relaxed, people then started renewing more licenses. So we had a huge backlog that was covered.
So that means basically people in that municipality were not going to renew. Okay. They were actually going slower than other areas. Okay, or Minister, maybe you have another solution?
Or perhaps the service wasn't rendered to the citizens in that municipality.
Okay.
Chair.
Chair.
Members, that's fine.
Chairperson.
I think the point has been raised and clarified. Is the
Chair, my recollection was that the Beaufort West section doing the licensing was to a large extent dysfunctional during the COVID pandemic, but I will confirm that for you. We'll just have to speak to our people just to make sure that's my recollection, that they weren't operating properly.
Now, I just wanted to check then, is this question related to the asking on the underperforming, on the list of underperforming? Oh, okay, that's still coming. Any other answers in the question that has been asked? There's still quite a number of questions I think has not been answered. Now, for example, if I may just recap Audit Committee.
Chair, I just want to give clarity on the question around the housing. It's actually from the management report, AG's management report. They raised it as an emerging risk. It wasn't. So I just want to raise it. And it said departments of human settlements classify all housing-related expenditure as transfers to household in accordance with Sector specific guide, Human Settlements Departments, 2012. And then it says a change in classification of housing-related expenditure that will align to the classification requirements in the economic reporting format will be required at the date still to be determined. So I think the AG could help here with this, just get clarity. I'm sure it was preempting the merger. I don't know if Ashley want to assist. So we want to get clarity on that.
Yes, Chair. In anticipation of the merger between the two departments, and at that stage, I don't think we had an idea of when exactly the departments would fall into one department. We put that into the Department of Public Works and Transport's management report as well, in anticipation of the merger. So that's the reason for including that paragraph in DTPW's management report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Can we then continue on the questions that are still outstanding, Department? Now, I think the issue of question that were raised by Honorable America, I think the issue of George Hub in the garages and has been answered. And then I think the Honorable Maseko's question on municipalities and how they were assisted on the classification of the housing expenditure, that was answered in the Department of Infrastructure and Emerging Risk. Honorable Nkondlo on the understanding on the transfers on municipalities and the impact on municipalities, list of projects where these projects are. And I think the question of Honorable Amanda that we just dealt with on 265, page 265 on for those municipalities and accounting for George solar panels. Now, I don't know Honorable Nkondlo's question. Can we get responses on those?
Chair, Chantal. Chairperson, through you, the reply to the question on page 238, what the community-based program is all about. It's got 5 key components. The one is the expanded public works program, the coordination of the program, which has got 2 legs, coordination on the one hand, and then secondly, compliance monitoring, which is making sure that the reporting around the EPWP program happens in accordance with the prescripts. Then there's a component called empowerment impact assessments, which, well, that's what it's called, and it has to do with conducting empowerment impact assessments on our major infrastructure projects that the department implements, with a view to, as the term says, with a view to expanding empowerment opportunities on those projects. Includes local labor, local suppliers, and so on. Then we have a emerging contractor development program, and we also have a quite extensive skills development program, which includes our artisan development program as well as our NYS learnership program. Thank you.
CFO, just before you. CFO.
Can I help? Because I think the question was whether on page 238 that 54.9 million is for stipends or what it's for. If you,
I'm interested in the cost items. What does the money buy?
So that's what I want to show. If you can turn to page 225, page 225, then there's a breakdown of that exact amount. And you will see what's included in there, which is the compensation of employee, goods and services, departmental agencies and accounts, households, and then machinery and equipment. So it's the total operations of the community-based public programs budget.
Just, may I just add, Chantal, on that it does also both in the compensation of employees, we pay for our artisan program through COE, and we pay our stipends for our learners that are on our program via the goods and services component. So it's not just compensation of our own employees, but it's also for our artisan program and for our stipends on our NYS program. Thank you.
You still have appetite for more questions, honorable members? Okay. Let's start with Honorable Makamba Mbocha.
Yeah, thank you, Chairperson. I only have two questions. The first question is on page 244, where there is a written off amount of 215,000, which involve I think it's 41 cases of ex-employees. So I would like to know if that money was recovered, and if not recovered, what was the reason for it not to be recovered? And then the last question is on page 254, pertaining to the issue of the bid that was awarded to a supplier that was not tax compliant, and that resulted in an irregular expenditure. So I would like to know, how did that transpire? How was the award, the bid awarded to somebody who was not tax compliant, which then resulted to an issue of irregular expenditure? Thank you. That is page 254.
Honorable Masek.
Thank you very much, Chair. I don't have a lot of questions, just one. I just want to find out, I mean, the department, it's one department that always talked a lot about the maintenance, how important it is, rather than starting afresh on the construction. But I see from the annual performance plan throughout the year, I think 2020, 2021, you had a 93, and 2023 is going to be 81, of which this year it was 79. So it's just escalating down and up. So I want to find out that whim of up and down. What is the reason for that? Is it because of the financial constraints, or there is a reason to that? If I can, and more especially if I look at the page 216, where is it 216? Yeah, on maintenance. I mean, you spend all your allocation on the maintenance, that means you are championing it. But why the up and down numbers of the projects that you identify for the maintenance? That's all for me, Chair.
Honorable Gondlo. My question on 241 on the increase on, I think it's computer services and transport provided as per the departmental activities. It can be answered.
Page 241 on?
241 on goods and services. Computer services in that column, together with transport, that increased from 79,405 to 185,867.
Department, acting HOD.
Thank you, Chair. So the items written off, the 215,000 rand, 41 cases. So these cases are only finalized once it's gone through the legal procedure. So the state attorney would then indicate whether the person would be able to pay back money to the department. If the person is determined a man of straw, that is the terminology they use. So if the person is determined to be a man of straw, they wouldn't then indicate to the department to recover money because there's no money to be recovered, or the person would have no assets to be attached to it. tax compliance.
Thanks, Chair. So the matter on the bid that was awarded to a supplier of tax matters was not in order. It happened on one of our emergency framework contracts. At the time when the contract was awarded to the company, all tax matters was in order. This instance happened during hard lockdown when the guy became non-compliant and the order was issued in that period. So yes, that's what happened. Thank you.
And the increase in computer services is mainly attributable to the technology that was installed in the Golden Arrow buses. So the cameras, etc., and that is to facilitate the safety of the commuters. The increase in the transport provided to department. So the transport provided, that is mainly attributable to the Blue Dot and the Red Dot programs.
Still consulting. Now, honorable members, any further questions?
Chair, when did Blue Dot start? You want to have a colleague.
Caucus. Caucus.
No, Chair, I was trying to understand, thank for the response, ma'am. When you say it's because of the Blue Dot, you say?
2020.
Then, no, I understand. I'm just trying to understand in context of the previous financial year. That was what the question was. So it's better if you said there is an addition from the previous year so that one gets to understand. Because when you just say, no, it's the extension of the Blue Dot, sitting here, I don't understand what you mean.
So Blue Dot was started 18 months ago, and it started with less participants on the program. And as the program then continued, there was, yes. Thank you.
Chair, the maintenance project will go to Andrea. Page 216, question about the fluctuation in the maintenance expenditure per annum.
Chairperson, may I just ask for the question, please, to be repeated? I didn't quite catch all of it.
Okay. What I'm asking is that as a department, you champion maintenance, but when you look at target setting, you are not increasing the numbers. So 2020, 2021, the number was high and then it went down for this financial year. This coming financial year is going a little bit up, not equals to 2020, 2021. So I'm trying to find out the reason for that. What is it? Because looking at the budgeting, you spend 100% when coming to maintenance, but the numbers are not increasing, showing that one of the programs that you increase the target.
If I can just understand the question. So the question is around the target setting in terms of the actual budget that has been allocated, rather than the number of interventions. Sorry, I'm not sure which page we're talking about.
Why your target setting is not increasing year to year?
Because the targets will be set according to the budget that has been provided. So it depends how much budget is made available for the various maintenance interventions.
So what you are saying to me is that you don't react to the need, you just see how much do I have and then you allocate for maintenance. And that is why I started by talking to the statement of you saying that you champion maintenance because you don't want to let go of some of the infrastructure that you already have started. Maintenance also important to you. Now, I tend to believe that if that is the case, the driver will be you maintain as you continue to grow as a Department of Infrastructure. Now, when you come and say to me that with what I have, I'll do what is it that I have to do, my understanding on the response that you gave to me, unless I'm wrong in thinking in that fashion. Maybe you can help me to have a clear understanding to that.
Let me try, Chair. So for the last couple of years, what we have been doing, and it's actually part of a GIAMA requirement, is that we do facility condition assessments in depth of the entire portfolio, so the entire property portfolio. It's a 5-year cycle and we get audited against it. From that facility condition assessments, there's a clear view around what buildings needs to be maintained, what is the extent of the maintenance, what's the nature of the components that you need to maintain and by when. There's also very clear guidelines on things such as the asbestos, buildings with asbestos, when those needs to be prioritized and so on, and especially things highlighted in the last year or two around occupational health and safety components within buildings. This we table annually through the MTEC process with the Provincial Treasury. However, we have not received for general infrastructure specifically, which is Andrea's program, we have not received other than a little allocation for health and safety matters, which was a far cry from what we actually ask and what we need in order to bring the buildings up to the level of compliance, legal compliance. So the maintenance budgets that were allocated and that did increase was maintenance budgets for the Department of Education. And that allocation was quite a large allocation and was given directly to the Department of Education, of which they allocated a total budget of about 1.2 billion rand for the department, and that includes both maintenance and capital programs, and of which they kept about 1.3, 1.4 billion that they indicated they're going to implement themselves. So I hope that assists you, because what that then means is within general infrastructure and within the department actually, we need to almost do a balancing act around what kind of money do we give. And you would have seen there's not really a lot of new buildings in the general infrastructure space because the money that we do have goes into maintenance. In other words, maintaining what we have as opposed to building new, because we can't really build ourselves out of trouble.
Thank you very much, CFO, because I was really going to be surprised because this building, and the members that are going to laugh because we are complaining again and again and nothing is working. So I was trying to find out what is really the root of the problem, that sometimes we are too hot, sometimes we are too cold, and it's a lot of things that are not working around this building that we have to find out what is the root of the problem for us to have an understanding. And with me chairing the Parliamentary Oversight Committee, before I go to the speaker to say what is happening, I need to also start here to say what is happening, because I'm definitely sure, Minister Simmers, we are not owing a rent. We are up to date with the rent.
Just maybe also to note that the modernization program, which the department started, and you would recall there was conversations even about this building and whether it should move, whether it should be expanded and so on. There was this conversation started. So the modernization program, even we had to bring to a complete standstill because no budget was given. And in fact, year on year, the department was asked to cut in excess of 300 million rand for infrastructure projects annually. So it kind of just gives you an idea of the calls that we had to make. Andrea, if you want to add, but
I think I'm pretty much covered, although I can appreciate the discomfort to the occupants of this building. It is a complicated building. It is very, very old. It forms part of not only the 7 and 15 Wales Street side, but also the 4 Dorp Street precinct. I'm just giving you that by way of background. There are heritage elements, but you will be pleased to note that we have started what is called a wet services upgrade, which you won't see, but is absolutely critical to the pipework, the sewage, the water, which is exceptionally old, is dysfunctional in parts, and requires a very expensive and extensive and lengthy overhaul. So you will be noting some changes. Just please bear with us.
I think that you're forcing me now. I mean, we have bear with you for the. I want to conclude. No, we have bear with you for the last 8 years. I mean, this lift has been stuck a few times. I've been self-stuck in the lifts in the last few years. This morning when I pressed 0, it stops at 3, doing ticket. So it's not about modernization. It's about fixing what we have. And at the moment, this particular building, we are the tenants in this building, can tell you horror stories for some of those buildings. So I hope the modernization gets to us, because we have not benefited from 8 years that I'm a member of this parliament. We have not benefited from any wet or dry upgrades. But it's ice cold. If you can feel now, we deliberately kept it hot. Otherwise, we used to sit here with jackets on. So I hope you're going to fix part of us with your modernization program, because we have not benefited from it. But to wish you all the best of luck. Thank you for your number 10, your 10th audit. Is there dinner, Chairperson?
No, I just want to say thank you to the committee. Thank you, Chair, for the robust discussion. And once again, thank you to the team that ensure good governance, clean audits, and services to the citizens of this beautiful province. Thank you.
Chairperson, just from my side, thank you for some very intriguing questions to the department, and once again, congratulations on the 10th consecutive audit. We now prepare for the new department itself, and like I said earlier on, it's now about innovation to inspire hope for our people. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to say thank you to the committee also, and then and again acknowledge our department head who's not here. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson. From our side, we also want, obviously, during our interactions, we congratulated the department on its audit outcomes, and we're looking forward to working with the new department when that actually comes into being, in terms of the processes around the audit of the departments as it's going to be constituted. Thank you, Chairperson.
Audit Committee.
Thank you, Chair. I can only concur with the AG as well. Excellent performance in governance by this department and GMT. Disclosure is good. Very few findings by the AG, so well done to CFO, the HOD, the whole team. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, then, department led by the minister. Just want also to say that, look, accountability is not an easy process, and it can be made easy if we take it as a collective as well, and not to compete with each other, but complement each other. And also, there are no holy cows on accountability. We are not going to ask all the time comfortable questions, but rest assured that when we ask them, we are not intending to either trick you nor trying to catch you up. We are just also grateful at your cooperation when we are actually having the meeting of this nature. So rest assured that we are actually wanting you to continue succeeding and continuing doing the good work. And I think it's actually one of the departments, whenever we are engaging, we learn something as well. Whilst some of the questions we are asking might be very difficult and uncomfortable, but as I normally say to all the departments, we don't want to catch you up. We are just delivering on our role and responsibility of having the executive to account. Thank you very much, Honorable Ministers, both of you. It's a unique situation where we are blessed by having two ministers in one department. And I think also your cooperation as well, and I could see you also assisting in not only in answering and also in making sure that the question that we've asked have been answered. I've been seeing that, watching that coming in both ways as well. The department will say no, they feel this question has not been answered. Can there be more? So that's what we want in order for us to make sure that we deliver on the services. Thank you very much. We are now going to adjourn just for 10-15 minutes because we are also a big delegation. So because when you go out, we'll definitely be disrupting the process. So at the same time, you can also go and join us. There are refreshments. Then we are going to convene again at 1:15. Oh, you want us to, they can leave? Okay, no, sure. Okay, sure. Okay. No, it will be gone. Do you know it?